Hey fools, what's up? What's up? What's up? What's up? It's been a while. It's not always you find an article that is so kind of self-destroying that you can basically read it and you don't have to do much. Everything that's in it basically just destroys and debunks itself. So you just kind of have to laugh at just how deranged it is. And I found this article. I don't know if anyone's covered it. It appears to be from around 2018 on some Nordic Scandinavian blog or something. It says at the top, Kunstkritik, which I don't know what that means. And I became aware of this from the Britisher at first who posted it. And it's just one of these SJW things that is utterly insane. So I think I'm just going to kind of read through it and laugh and be hit by like the waves of the cringe that I'm inevitably going to get because I've already had a little bit of a read through it and it's frigging insane. The title of it, just so you can get some idea, is Hydrofeminism is solidarity across watery bodies. So, already I'm thinking back to that study that someone did ages ago that was like feminism in glaciology and climate science or something like that, where they were like trying to apply social justice bullshit to like the science of glaciers. So let's read. What's this? Planetary thinking is feminist thinking, state the curators behind Laboratory for Aesthetics and Ecology as they publish a book about hydrofeminism by Maria Bordorf. Almost 80% of the human body is water. We are practically a kind of jellyfish. At any rate, we have more in common with the jellyfish and every other more or less watery species and forms of matter on our blue planet than most of us tend to believe. Among those who are cognizant of our watery links to the wider world, we find the small Copenhagen publishing house and curatorial platform laboratory for aesthetics and ecology. The 5 curators behind the laboratory see water as transnational, trans-species, and transcorporeal. The laboratory has just published a Danish translation of Astrida Naimani's text, Hydrofeminism, or On Becoming a Body of Water, while also launching the exhibit Project Hydra, which will unfold over the course of the spring at the edge of the water at Snekkersten. Cool name for a place, north of Copenhagen. So this is Denmark, I believe? Fuck, I thought it was like Sweden or Norway. The group members themselves describe the project as an exploration of watery worldlings, transcorporeal trauma, and oceanic healing. So it sounds a bit like spiritualism woo here. A little bit. Launched in 2014. Oh, fuck. That far back? Okay. Laboratory for Aesthetics and Ecology. Why aesthetics? I don't understand. A laboratory of... Oh, man. That doesn't sound right. Comprises Dea Antonsen, Ida Benck, Elena Lundqvist Ortiz, Andrea Fjordside Pontoppidan, and Miriam Weisstreich. Fucking crazy ass name. They share a background in cultural studies and literature studies, I'm not surprised, which means that the laboratory acts as an interdisciplinary think tank focusing on post-humanist... Is that like transhumanism? I'm going to guess that's a bit like transhumanism. And ecological issues. Post-humanist. Humanism is like advocacy for all humans, kind of fairness between all humans, like treat all humans fair, no matter who they are, what their background, sort of thing. I don't know what post-humanist is. That sounds like not that, but something else, as if we've evolved past it. I don't quite know what they're saying there. Shall I quickly look up post-humanist on the terribly biased and annoying Wikipedia just to see what it says? See if I can make heads or tails of any of it. Humanism, yeah, we're talking about something else. Post-humanism, after humanism, beyond humanism. 7 definitions. Oh, that's... I mean, you can't really trust something that has 7 definitions. Anti-humanism, critical of humanism, cultural post-humanism, don't know what that is. Philosophical post-humanism, examines the ethical implications of expanding the circle of moral concern beyond the human species. What, to animals? Post-human condition. Just sounds like the result of loads of people arguing about humanism for frigging ages and trying to challenge it. Transhumanism, there we go, that's what I think it is. Using technology to enhance yourself without becoming a cyborg, necessarily. More like genetic modification of humans. Basically, what's the thing the Nazis used that Richard Dawkins has been talking about recently? Eugenics. Yes, transhumanism is quite eugenic sounding to me. AI takeover is another definition of post-humanism. What? A variant of transhumanism, in which humans will not be enhanced, but replaced by robots. I guess that's post-humanism, like after humanity, that's post-humanity, not really post-humanism. Voluntary human extinction is another definition of it. Voluntary human extinction! So, is that like those death cult things where everyone just decides as a collective cult to commit suicide together? There was a religious thing like that in America that I read about. It was really strange. I can't remember what it was called. Which seeks a post-human future. A future without humans. These are humans seeking this future without humans. Why don't they individually take their life and not seek to, like, take everyone else's life at the same time? I don't get it. Whatever. So that's strange. Yes. Acts as an interdisciplinary think tank focusing on post-humanist. Now we know what that is. And ecological issues. It is a bit like transhumanism, basically. But that last one, voluntary extinction, some of the climate people, like the Greta Thunberg cultists, are acting like that. Let's eradicate humans and let animals take over the earth, while they are humans. Saying this. Last year they curated the exhibitions Et Niet Vi, A New We, at Kunsttrondheim about communities in the so-called Anthropocene era. I actually fucking hate the term Anthropocene. We're not in this thing called the Anthropocene, we're in the Holocene. We never came out of it. I refuse to believe that humans have been that powerful and effective enough to shape something as long-lasting as Earth's kind of geology and, especially because it happens in geological time spans, and I think humans are obsessed with naming things and labelling things, especially eras of time, and they're impatient, and they have short attention spans in general, and can't wait for geological time spans in order to name things. Like, they have to have it now. Like, people want to do things now. They don't want to... Geological time spans mean things will happen after you're dead, after your kids are dead, after your kids' kids are dead, if you have kids. And no one wants to wait that long to kind of name a time span if they're into that sort of thing. So it just shows a kind of, a shallowness, I think. So we're in the Holocene. But you're going to hear something much funnier and much crazier than the Anthropocene in a sec. Among their range of publications, currently numbering around 20, with more to come, we find text by figures such as Donna Haraway, Juliana Spahr, Ursula K. Le Guin, and Jane Bennett. Last year, the laboratory received the newly founded Sharda Award, which is specifically awarded to projects that cut across the boundaries of art and literature. Let's get to some of the good bits. Kunstkritik met up with the 3 members of the laboratory for a chat about hydrofeminism, about staying with the trouble, and about why the Anthropocene is in a way an arrogant concept. Well, I mean, I think they're looking at it from a completely different angle from me, but yes, I do kind of agree that the Anthropocene is an arrogant concept, but I know that they're looking at this through a different lens from me. Keeping it short and sweet, what is hydrofeminism? Alina Lundqvist-Ortiz. Hydrofeminism is about solidarity across watery selves. What? What does that even mean? Watery, like selves as in myself. Selves. Watery selves, not shelves. Across bodies of water. Today we see acidification of the oceans, rising sea levels, dying coral reefs, and polluted groundwater, to mention just a few examples. Hydrofeminism shows us that we are all involved in this through watery interactions and circulations. Water flows through bodies, species, and materialites. I haven't heard the word materialites before. Connecting them for better or worse. Today, planetary thinking is feminist thinking. Now, what you're referencing there is called physics, and you're saying it in a very strange, spaced out kind of a way, and trying to put your political spin on it. Dear Antonson, it's not that abstract really. You take a sip of water, and that water will flow through you and onwards out into the world. Yes, you need to go to the toilet when you drink water. Understanding that interconnectedness gives rise to a new kind of ethical obligation. No, it doesn't. No, it doesn't. You drink some water and you go to the toilet. There's water all around the world. Everyone is involved in water. This doesn't mean you need to stick feminist politics onto it. And it doesn't mean you're obliged ethically to do anything. Suddenly, something very distant and remote feels up close and intimate. Only because you've done the mental gymnastics to overthink it. Just imagine, you share the water you drink with someone on the other side of the world. Not necessarily. I think the water you drink, you take it in, it goes out. Eventually it reaches rain clouds, but I think it would take a long time to circulate around to the other side of the planet entirely. That particular water, if you could somehow tag it, of course you can't really tag water unless it's ice, then you can put a tag in it so you know where it goes. I know what they're on about, but I disagree with the way they're framing it. This introduces a whole new way of seeing and understanding your own interconnected body. Your own interconnected body? I don't know why they're saying that. Water is transnational. Now, because they're saying that because of the water cycle and such, you could drink some water and eventually via kind of evaporation and clouds and wind blowing clouds around the planet and raining into the oceans, then re-evaporation to the oceans into more clouds that go around to get to the other end of the planet. Theoretically, that because that's happening, water is going across borders and countries, and therefore national borders are kind of entangled with water, and water's entangled with you, and so you don't need to trust national borders. Trans species, yeah, all animals use water, and transcorporeal, I have no idea what they're saying with that. Is Laboratory for Aesthetics and Ecology a feminist project? Dear Antonson, an eco-feminist project, yes. And increasingly, so as we have ventured deeper and deeper into the realms of post-human and multi-species thinking. I was really into futurism when I was younger, and to a degree I still am, but this is This is some bizarre warping of futurism, I think, and a very bizarre mixture of science, philosophy, and politics and activism. And in a kind of hazy thinking where they just, let's blur everything in our minds together. Let's homogenize everything. Everything in the world is basically all a big blob together. There's not really any defining, any distinctiveness between a part over here and a part down there, because you see that part over here shares some similarities with the part down here. Therefore, they're basically the same thing, and they're together, and they're acting together, and therefore there's no real boundary between them. So there's no real distinction between that thing over there and that thing over there, is there? Is there? Fuck me. They want, like, homogeneity, whereas I quite value distinctiveness, uniqueness between things, those borders between cells, you know. If the cells of organisms didn't have the borders of the cell wall, and the nucleus and the metabolism, then they wouldn't really exist as life forms. They'd just be like water, you know. Like our very life on this planet is created by boundaries and distinctions, you know. They have similarities, yes, but they have these distinctions. You can't just remove the boundaries because it removes the meaning of what the actual objects are. This May, you will publish a Danish edition of Donna Haraway's Making Kin in the Cthulhu Scene. Yes, remember we said Holocene and Anthropocene earlier? Cthulhu Scene is apparently a thing these people are pushing. I can see the wateriness in that, although I bet they don't like H.P. Lovecraft's thoughts about the world. Kin in the Cthulhu Scene, reproducing multi-species justice. Oh, that grates on my mind. Multi-species justice. I can imagine this is like giving human rights to animals, and eventually I know they're going to do this, giving human rights to machines as if they're not tools and basically glorified spoons and hammers. I think that's going to be what social justice eventually does, is like, apart from the kind of whole sex bots thing impinging on like the thoughts, the e-thoughts, and taking their money, I think they're going to eventually try and act as if robots have human rights. And there'll be like street marches and activist protests, and then anyone who's got an actual robot, like the Boston Dynamics robot, someone who's managed to buy one of those, will bring it to these street activist protests and hang garlands on it, and they'll walk with their signs side by side with this little fake electro dog and go like, he has the same rights as we do. It's going to be hilarious. This is a text that has provoked a number of feminists because it calls for humankind to stop having children. I don't think humans should stop having children, but I do tend to believe, and I know this is an unpopular view, I do tend to believe to a degree in overpopulation, and it's the over bit of that phrase that is, I think, the issue for a lot of people, because it depends how you define the over. If you define it based on how quickly the population is replaced and how quickly death rates are outstripped by birth rates and things, then you can come to some figure which you think is over the amount. Where I tend to think of overpopulations in terms of how much resources each human needs and requires to live, or maybe expects to have for themselves. And by resources, I don't just mean like how much space you have to walk around. You talk about overpopulation to a kid and they're imagining like how crowded it is and like 20 people packed into an elevator or something, like how much space they have to move, whereas actually it's obviously about each person needs a job, a house, calculate all the food that they will need over their entire lifetime from birth to death, calculate how much space they'd need to feel not trapped in a cage, and how much roaming space they'd need, and how each of them want access to, say, transport links, things like this. Yeah, but I'm not going to tell anyone. I'm a freedom advocate. I'm not going to tell anyone not to have children. I just think it's worth persuading people or encouraging people not to have kids, because we are packed as it is, and I think we're too packed, and I think that is having an impact on the resources that each of us expects as humans to have. And maybe we should expect less. I don't know. That's my view on it, and I know some people are gonna hate me bringing up overpopulation as if it's a worthy thing to discuss. A lot of people are like, you believe the myth, the overpopulation myth. I think it depends on how you define the over in overpopulation. Anyway, I don't agree with the feminists who, especially these particular feminists, who want voluntary human extinction or whatever. They want us to stop having children completely, it seems. I don't know how they plan on keeping the population going if they stop having children completely. My view is that I don't know if I'm likely to have kids. Because I don't particularly want them. But I mean, it's fine for the people who do want to have kids, and therefore the species will continue. Also, there's a lot of people, you can't just stop people breeding, it's just going to happen. What is your position on Haraway's ideas? Ida Benk. I have children myself. That's another thing. You can't really have a decent conversation with overpopulation with someone who has kids, because it kind of makes them feel guilty. And they don't want to feel guilty, so they naturally argue against it. But they shouldn't. I mean, the way to have a conversation with someone like that is that they shouldn't need to feel guilty about it. We're not wishing away their children's existence or anything. We're just saying that future generations maybe encourage people to have less, because there's not that many resources. And if you imagine an Earth now that everything has been created, the infrastructure has been created, the houses have been created, and I know you need people working in a lot of jobs like the electrical grid and stuff to keep the power going, but I think there must be some lower level of population that we could have, and we could still keep everything going. But the bountifulness of what has always been created by the past generations will be shared between fewer people. So, thousands of houses, millions of people, there's going to be loads of homeless. Thousands of houses, thousands of people, everyone's going to get their own house. They might even be able to have 2 houses per person or something. But I don't think there's any practical way to make my idea happen, so I'm not an actively campaigning activist. China had a one-child policy. I don't know if that actually worked, because I think people can't be... that's a freedom constraint. You're constraining people's freedom, and you can't really force people not to have kids like that. And natural disaster is the only other way I think is gonna lose the population in a big way. And even a natural disaster now, I don't think is gonna reduce the numbers enough to make an impact. And nor is my view, which is encouraging and persuading people to have less kids. I don't think that's going to make much of an impact. I think we're kind of stuck on this train now, and it's just going forward. Our duplication is going to lead to overcrowding. And I don't think it's going to plateau somehow. People think it's going to plateau. I'm not so sure. Back to the article. I have children myself, says Ida Benke. So it's important to point out that our choice to publish Haraway's text as problematic as it is, feminist buzzword, does not mean that there is a perfect match between the laboratory and Haraway's statement, make kin not kind. But we do recognise that it's crucial to negotiate matters of reproduction and the structuring of families in the Anthropocene because of the climate crisis, and because there are too many of us on this planet. It should be said that we're not very fond of using the term the Anthropocene, even though it can be handy at times. Speaking about reproduction from an ecological point of view is difficult, not least because our position is that of white, privileged feminists. Oh, they're playing the white privilege card. It does not exist, okay? And this is very much an issue of racial, social, and financial inequalities. I don't believe you. Haraway is criticised for not paying enough attention to the various situated material, political matters of reproduction, and I look forward to seeing her response to that criticism. Dear Antonsen, we enter into this conversation fully aware of how problematic it is. Of course you do. After all, so many of the issues and relationships we address are. That is why we have adopted Haraway's expression, staying with the trouble. It has become a kind of mantra for our work overall. You say that you don't like the use of the concept of the Anthropocene. Dear Antonsen, it's an arrogant concept. It tars all of humanity with the same brush, claiming that humanity is a cause of climate change. Wait for it. Many, including plenty of feminists in this field, have criticised this, because it is not all of humanity, but white culture that has exploited the resources of the planet and other bodies. White culture! I don't think I've heard of the phrases being jigged that way. White culture. It's normally whiteness, isn't it? They normally say, oh, it's whiteness. The concept of whiteness. White culture is like that mixed with rape culture, isn't it? Oh, I know what they're gonna do, right? The eco-feminists. They're gonna take rape culture and they're gonna turn it into rape of the natural world culture. That's what's next. I swear. That's funny. White culture. So, they think the Anthropocene, the idea of man-made climate change, like humans being responsible for climate change, is an arrogant concept because it's not humans that are responsible for climate change. No. It's the ones with the pale skin hue. Yeah. It's them. That's racist. Yeah. That's just plain fucking racist. They're so oblivious to this, aren't they? Ida Benke. It is an operational term that can be used if you need to briefly outline the basis of a conversation. But however handy that kind of term can be, it can just as easily end up bringing the conversation to a halt in a place where it actually ought to go on. Is there some other concept you prefer to use instead? Ida Benke. Not really. We'd probably rather talk about ecological issues and post-humanist questions. And then we try to wean ourselves off from thinking in terms of binary universals. After all, we have been trained to think in terms of human and animal, women and men. Are they going to blur the lines between human and animal next? Oh my god. They're going to blur the lines between human and animal in their head, in their kind of political language. They're going to say, well, is a dog that different from a man? Or are they? We should start thinking of dogs and men as the same thing. Because they both have eyes and a nose. Fuck. They both have legs. Basically, tiny differences between these two items. So they're basically this thing and this thing. They're basically one homogeneous blob. Dear Antonsen, this is where the translation aspect of our practice enters the picture. It requires us to pay attention to how we conceptualize the other and ourselves. Othering. Thing here, thing here. Oh, they're racist to each other. They're othering each other. This cell can't be over here and this cell can't be over here with their walls, with their borders. No, they have to be over here because else they're racist against each other. They keep othering each other. Fuck. I knew it. For example, humans and animals are often described as the binary oppositions. The human and the non-human. We try to say the more than human in Danish instead. Really? Is that a built-in phrase in the Danish language? That's not good. And you might argue that this is binary too, but it doesn't negate that which is not perceived as human. I can see what they're doing here. So is your work on translating text into Danish actually a kind of linguistic activism? Oh fucking hell. Feminism, it just is linguistic activism. They're so obsessed with controlling the language, and they have so many definitions of words that everyone used to use in the 20th century. They've just redefined it. Like racism. They have the incorrect definition of prejudice plus power being what racism is supposed to mean in their ideology today. And luckily, people don't tend to believe that anymore. And I think it's partly due to all the kind of anti-sjw activism, or I won't call it that, the anti-sjw pushback between 2014 and 2018 that probably put a halt to things like that gaining ground in the mainstream. I think if they didn't have that pushback, that might, like, the prejudice plus power definition of racism might be a present thing. It's kind of terrifying. Dear Antonson, you could certainly say that our work with translating important, innovative texts and introducing their concepts in Danish is politically motivated. Yeah, you could. Many of the texts we work with are constantly inventing new phrases, yes they are, and ways of putting things that we insist should also become part of the Danish language. You need to open up your language to accommodate new conversations. Ida Benke. I'm not very comfortable with the term activism. I'm wary of running the risk of appropriating practices that are indeed much more risky than ours. There are activists out there who are risking life and limb. Okay. We don't, even if we do something curatorial that feels a little transgressive. Dear Antonson, it's certainly a different kind of activism. You might say that we are trying to promote vulnerability in a world where there's very little room for vulnerability. Is that what you think you're doing? Elena Lundqvist-Ortiz. Yes, or that we introduce the introvert as an alternative method or position that has been underrated compared to the extrovert, and to this whole thing about being ever so efficient and productive. Don't quite know what they're trying to say there about introverts and extroverts, but it's interesting. Are they trying to say one's better than the other? In what way are they trying to say one's better than the other, if so? I imagine that you think very carefully about creating exhibitions and publications in a sustainable manner? Oh, definitely. We began by making tiny pamphlets that we could cut out and bind by hand. There was a deliberate slowness to this. A special care for each little publication. Oh, they took their time with it. And in terms of ecological concerns, we also didn't want to have piles of books that no one's buying, mouldering away in a basement somewhere. Oh, they're just like, oh, we're going to make loads of books and stuff. Oh, but how can we do it in a climate change way, in an ecological manner? There's like the whole plastic bags, paper bags. It's like when a customer comes into our shop and they want paper bags instead of... They want each product that they see to be in a paper bag, including things that can go off very easily and that need to be air sealed, or that ideally, or that might be a liquid product. Just stuff that basically you can't put in paper bags anyway, because it'll just, like, decay or something. It's not always practical. Ida Benke, in terms of exhibition work, we are interested in staying with projects for longer time spans, allowing them to evolve, reassessing the questions under scrutiny and including all of those thorny, self-contradictory issues that might turn up. So-called slow curating, simply rushing off an exhibition then dashing on to new products isn't very satisfactory, nor does it seem like a very sustainable working ethos for our field. Our most recent collaborative project, M/Otherhood, I guess that's focusing on the word other, is intended to be the kind of long-term project we'd like to see. It will be carried out in cooperation with the American Curator Collective. the multi-species salon, and will launch in Australia, Melbourne this September, then tour USA. It's quite boring shit at the moment. Europe and beyond. Along the way, we'll address questions about how we might expand our family structures to better accommodate multi-species living. Do you just mean having pets? And caring for hybrid creatures in future worlds. What? Did I just miss something there? We're suddenly into deep futurism all of a sudden. I thought they were talking about pets. Along the way, we will address questions about how we might expand our family structures to better accommodate multi-species living. I just picture, like, people living in a house with their cats and dogs. Then they're suddenly like, living and caring for hybrid creatures in future worlds. Now I'm like, people on a Mars colony with this genetic abomination that they've created by splicing things together. Have you seen the movie Splice? Oh, exactly like that. That's what I'm picturing. One of those little things. Eventually morphs into a big genderless sex creature that goes and fucks and kills everything. Yeah. That's what they're thinking of, isn't it? Multi-species living. The movie Splice. In fact, the multi-species salon is something of a guiding light for our laboratory's work. What other artist or curatorial projects inspire you? Ida Benke. Lots. The American artist Karen Bolender, for example, who works with donkeys and genuinely tries to enter into democratic interspecies collaboration with more than human others. Do they mean the donkeys are more than human? What? In what way? One of the huge driving forces behind our work is a more or less constant infatuation. I can believe it. A feeling of being in love with tiny practices working away on the margins of the established. Tear it all down, that's what they're trying to say. Dear Antonsen, we've also just entered a long-term collaboration with the performance collective Dance for Plants. I'm not surprised. Which is partly based in Copenhagen and where the participants, yes, you guessed it, dance for plants, in the homes of private individuals. Why would you let these psychos in your home? They're going to dance around your plants. Creating a space where intimate and meaningful relationships between people and their houseplants are taken seriously. Oh, I'm enjoying this article now. I need more of the hydrofeminism though. So go deeper. I want to hear them just talk it out until they just have a major malfunction and collapse. Ida Benke, if we were to point to a major event, we found the Anthropocene project at Haus der Kulturen der Welt, culminating in 2009, to be a watershed moment for us. Even though that undertaking has been described as a failure, there's no escaping the fact that it was an ambitious, interdisciplinary project that really made a difference in terms of prompting international conversations about the post-human, perhaps precisely because of the difficulties it encountered along the way. If you were to urge the art scene to be more ecologically aware, what would you encourage people to do? Ida Benke, to rethink their concepts of collectivity, or just, not be in a collective, just why don't you think individually? It's a lot better. Reach out to other professions and disciplines. Expand the various fields and don't be scared of what Haraway calls blasphemous connections between different fields of knowledge. I don't know who Haraway is, but I kind of agree that overly uniting different fields of knowledge. Here we are again with the thing over here and the thing over there. Let's homogenize them into a blob. No, let's not. Let's keep everything distinctive. Let's keep all the puzzle pieces. It's like doing a puzzle, isn't it? My view is all the pieces of the puzzle should be... this is a bad analogy, because why would you keep all the puzzle pieces away? But they want to put all the puzzle pieces together and just have the result. There's got to be a better analogy. It's better to conserve the distinctiveness. It's like a field full of coloured shapes. You got the red triangle, the blue circle, the purple hexagon. And these feminists, they just want to merge it all into... and it's brown. All the colours are mixed. Now it's brown. Now there's a There's just a jumble. Put all the shapes on top of each other and make them transparent by 50% or whatever. And it's brown and it's a blob. Whereas I'm like, no, keep all the shapes over there. Will you? Then we can see what they are. Bizarre communities are a good place to go for eco-political reasons too. Yet, like fucking California or Seattle. Oh, that's the end of the article, it seems. I'm none the wiser about the hydrofeminism, but it was pretty funny. Oh man. So they think the donkey is more than human. They're trying to replace Anthropocene with Cthulhu-cene because Anthropocene blames all humans for climate change, where they just want to blame white people. And someone's letting people into their house to dance around their houseplants. And they want to wipe out the walls between everything by connecting all disparate things on Earth together so that nothing means anything anymore. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this little video. It's been a while since I did one of these kinds of vid. I hope you got something out of it. I'll see y'all later. I have no outro. Goodbye, fools.